Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of 73 Words in the 732, short stories from the East Brunswick Public Library. My name is Melissa Hosick, and we are back with more authors sharing their short stories that are 73 words or less. Today, I am joined by Franklin Cota from East Brunswick. Welcome, Franklin.
Hi, great to be here.
When did you start writing?
When I was 13, I remember watching The Phantom Menace, and I went in to talk to my mom, like, how does this get made? How does a movie come to be? And my mom was like, well, if somebody writes a screenplay, then they hand it off to the studio, and the studio turns into a movie. And I sat there, I was like, that's amazing. That sounds so cool. And I started writing screenplays back then, and over time, I eventually was like, well, this doesn't work, and I don't like writing screenplays. They're kind of boring. And I moved into writing novels, and all through high school, just really bad poetry, just the worst. I looked through my old notebooks, and I'm just like, do I keep this for posterity or do I burn it so that nobody will ever see this again? Because it was awful. And, they say that about most creative things. 2 or 3 years later, you're like, what was I thinking back then? If you don't look back at your old writing and say, that's terrible, you're lying to yourself. But yeah, I'm currently writing young adult novels and young adult manuscripts, trying to get something published, but nothing's ever really caught. So I just keep churning away.
It's a very complicated and complex process, so it's good that you keep chugging along. And yes, high school poetry is usually something we don't want to look back at, so
Yeah.
we understand that sentiment. Can you tell me more about what inspired you to write your short story submission?
I remember there was this webcomic called A Softer World, and they had somebody with wings and just like, I've never seen you without them and I follow you everywhere. And I'm like, well, that's kind of creepy. But I wanted to write my own version of it. It's also a bit inspired by Gabriel Garcia Marquez and how he had one short story about an old man who just happened to have angel wings and the kind of magical realism that's always going on in his stories. But we don't pay attention to it. It's not intrusive, it just happens. And I always think about that where you encounter people who say, I've seen a ghost or I've encountered Bigfoot. And there's a part of you that says, like, well, maybe it's not real. But then there's a part of you that does go through your life and you encounter things that don't quite make sense. And you try and wrap your head around them. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Who knows? I had a friend who was just that sweet and that kind. What if somebody was an angel or something beyond and that's where it came from? Or just as a joke sent me some feathers. I guess the plot point of it is just to leave the door open that maybe magic is real, maybe it isn't. This was actually a longer short story, and I think cutting it down to less than 70 words really improves it. Because you can also just explain too much.
That's part of the challenge of this. It's writing really long and writing really short are very different things. We would love to have you read it for our listeners.
It's called My Friend. She was beautiful and kind, the way you want your friends to be. We were inseparable. I followed her everywhere. I used to think that she was an angel sent to be my friend. Then where are my wings, she would say with a laugh. My family moved away and I lost contact with her, until my 21st birthday when I received 7 long, white feathers in the mail.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I believe you might have some other writing or creative projects you'd like to share with us. Can you tell us more about it?
My sister Susie and I do a podcast called Teen Girl Talk. We've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years at this point. We cover teen movies, teen shows, and teen books. So anything that involves a teen, we'll watch it and comment on it and point out like, hey, maybe this is a good message for teens. Maybe this wasn't so good. But we always just try and be funny and joyful and just help you get through your day. I have another podcast with my friend Donnie called I Hope I Can Make It Through about the show Degrassi, the Canadian teen show. And we just cover each episode, and we're going through all of Degrassi, the Next Generation right now. And we'll eventually move on to the many other series. This show ran for 10 years, not like 14 years. So it might take us a while.
You don't have to worry about running out of content then.
Yeah.
Franklin, thank you for stopping by and sharing your story.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for selecting my story. You guys have been selecting a lot of really great ones too. I highly recommend everybody go through all the others.
Appreciate the feedback. If you want to listen to other 73 Words episodes, visit ebpl.org/podcast or subscribe wherever you find podcasts.